I am here as ever with my dear friend, Dr. Richard Scott, GP. Hello, Richard.
Andy, very, very good to be back.
It always makes me smile when I see your face smiling back at me because a smile brings a smile. It kind of multiplies, doesn't it?
Well, that's very kind of you. People have said I've got a good face for radio, and I personally don't like looking at my face. I'm much happier looking at yours. So thank you for those kind comments.
No, it's fine. I think I was made for radio as well. Yes, my face is perfect for it. Okay, so we've a bit of a recap, I guess. We've spent 2 weeks looking at this topic of stress. It is such a far-reaching, wide issue that we actually touched it on two sessions. Before we dive into any questions, have you got any takeaways from those two sessions that you think, do you know what, that was a really important point that I think I just need to re-say?
Well, I think the second session. I mean, the first session we looked at short-term stress, long-term stress. Second session we focused a bit more on what to do about some of our stresses, maybe that we can't deal with, and see what the Bible is teaching us. And funny enough, just this afternoon, I've come from work just now, and a woman came in, a Polish lady with rectal cancer, and I thought, my goodness, I must help her. I've had rectal cancer. I must help her anyway, but that's exactly what I've had. And her son, translating, was saying, well, she's stressed about this situation. But I said, but you're Polish. Does that mean you're Catholics? Yes, we're Catholics. Good. You've got faith in God. Yes. Well, look, we must pray about this. Absolutely get the treatment as I did all those years ago. But try to say to people, look, this is the, if you like, the superpower that we have as Christians is that we can do something which non-believers cannot do, which is to bring it to God. Of course, there's things we can do ourselves about managing stress, which we've looked at the last couple of weeks, but bring stuff to God. Don't be slow. Go first. Go there first. And she was really happy. We prayed in a circle. It's the best part of my day. We all held hands, prayed. Lord, we want this woman to do well. But quite simply, we're asking for cure. Be with the scans, be with the surgeon, be with all the treatment. And she went out, I believe, less stressed than she came in, which is a result.
It's funny that I think sometimes we see prayer as when I pray, God's going to fix it so I feel better. But actually, yes, that may be the case, may not be the case. But I think for me personally, a big part of praying isn't so much God fixing it, but me changing my heart and giving something to God that I can't cope with myself.
Isn't that right? And it changes our attitude. And I think the longer we do this Christianity business, we learn more and more that actually it's not as simple as we thought. Your prayer isn't, okay, God, here's a problem, solve it, which he sometimes does, but it's often about getting our hearts right
Hmm.
and dependency on God and realizing that we can't solve it ourselves and all the changes. And also, it's very relaxing, unstressful to to say, actually, we're not in this alone. Thank goodness. We've got Christian brothers and friends, but even better, we've got God. Fantastic.
I remember a song in the 80s, and one of the lines in the song, one of our worship leaders got very, very upset about because the original line was, in his presence, our problems disappear. And he said, no, 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 that can't be right. They take their place. And to this day, I still think, well, no, actually, they can disappear. In God's presence, they are no longer relevant to us because now our focus isn't on the problem, it's on him. Theologically, we could debate, is it taking their place or disappear? But for me, when you're in God's presence, yeah, they disappear.
Yeah. It's well, yeah, and the Bible says, doesn't it? Fix your eyes on Jesus, and because if we don't, guess what? We fix our eyes on ourselves and our problems. And it's not to say we can totally ignore them. Obviously, we can't. There's things we must do, but it's about the right perspective. And I speak to myself about this, and I was getting very stressed last week, and actually a bit yesterday. And what gets me is technical issues. Computers not working. Suddenly they throw in an extra password that you haven't got. Even if you have got it, they don't accept it. All this sort of computer stuff. And sometimes I have to say to God afterwards, I'm so sorry. Look, I'm getting hot and bothered about what technical issues that, quite honestly, are going to get solved because I get my mate Jamie in to solve them. Forgive me for being stressed, and I should have just prayed to him in the first place and got Jamie involved.
There's two things there, though, isn't it? Because stress, the thing is, if you're not aware that stress is going on, you can suddenly find yourself sort of tripping over thinking, I thought I was doing okay. All of a sudden, your weak spot, your Achilles heel, perhaps, that triggers it. And then you're falling on your face thinking, I'm now in a bad place. I thought I was okay. And just come back on the whole topic of stress. How is it that sometimes we're sort of almost completely unaware of the
Mm.
fact we're stressed until that one more straw on the camel's back, which breaks us?
Yeah. Well, we have an enemy who is delighted when we're stressed. Stress and busyness, which of course is linked to stress and causes stress. is part of his one of his great tactics, especially in the West, for diverting us away from God. So, we have an enemy who specializes, I think, in encouraging us to get stressed. And equally, God says, cast your burdens on me, the antidote to stress. So I think, and the thing about the enemy is not only a lie, he's cunning. So it's hidden from us until suddenly it barred or obvious and slaps you in the face. If we're more alert to the Holy Spirit, again, speaking to myself here, just be more alert, more sensitive to what the Holy Spirit is saying, we'd suddenly think, goodness, I'm stressed. I need to give this to God now. Don't just wait till it gets worse. Do it now.
Cool. Right. Are you ready for a few questions randomly thrown at you?
For it.
Right. Okay. First one. Okay. I am curious to hear Dr. Richard Scott's thoughts about not eating meat.
About not eating meat. Well, I'm a meat eater, and I fully understand those that don't. My wife's probably best friend at the moment is not a meat eater, so they had a holiday together, no meat. And so my first job when she came home was to make her a proper roast. But actually, the Bible gives us teaching on that, and it says, if there are for people who don't want to eat meat, that's absolutely fine, and those of you who want to eat meat, that's also fine. Paul gives us permission to be in both camps. So I think that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you have a good vegetarian diet. Fine. I have a bit more trouble with veganism. I don't actually think that's quite so good for us. And that's why people often have to take supplements and can run into trouble if they're not careful. But proper vegetarianism, absolutely fine. And it's biblical.
What would be the difference then between veganism and vegetarianism? Because my understanding is probably not very good.
Well, vegans won't have any dairy products, anything related to an animal at all. So even they would have trouble with jellies, anything with gelatin in, which comes from often the pork loin fat, for example. No dairy products, no milk, no butter, no cheese. That's quite restrictive. And I get it because there's a lot of people around doing it, but I'm not sure that's such a great idea. I actually don't think that's how we were designed. Whereas vegetarianism was probably the original design before the fall of man. And my question to your listeners, and even you, Andy, is: do you think we'll be eating meat in heaven? Because I can't see how we can do that if the lion's lying down with the lamb and we're all getting on with each other. So I rather suspect heaven may be vegetarian, even if Earth isn't. But don't quote me on that.
No, perhaps we could have some steak flavored apples or something.
Indeed.
Which does reveal my thoughts on whether I eat meat or not.
Indeed.
Okay, another one. This, I think, was when we were doing the one on singing. I was listening on my way home. I'm often humming along to songs, but will make a concerted effort to sing now. However, do you think that you have to sing in tune?
Oh, no. And some of us are blessed in that department, and some aren't. One of my daughters is married to a man who is a self-confessed tuneless wonder. And when I stand next to him in church, oh, Nick, just tone that down slightly. But I think no, because it's all about is blessing God's heart. It's not about performance. It's all about our hearts and His heart, and He loves the fact that we try and sing. So I wouldn't put a tuneless person as a worship leader because that would be a poor use of gifts. But singing in the congregation, absolutely. Alongside that, actually, we've been talking about getting some of our young people in church to play musical instruments. It won't be quite as good to start with, but boy, I'm sure will God be delighted, and the angels will be cheering them on. It's not about a perfect performance, and the same applies to singing.
Which is one of the bits I love about how God views us and how we interact with Him, because He's not after the 10 out of 10 grade 8 pianist. He's
Thank
after
goodness.
someone with a heart. Yeah.
Thank goodness. Or the 10 out of 10 speaker, the 10 out of 10 prayer. Most of us aren't. We aren't 10 out of 10. And that's not important. What matters though is getting stuck in. And actually, this is where perfectionists sometimes can run into trouble as Christians, because they think, well, unless I can do something perfectly, I won't do it. I don't think it says that in the Bible. And actually, you just end up stressed if you're not careful about things. And have it a go. Do your best. I think that is important. Do your best.
A question, pretty much what I've already asked you: is it possible to be stressed without knowing that you're stressed?
Well, I think so, because we have an enemy who hides things from us. So I think that's possible. There'll come a point there when it will be bound or obvious, even to us. By the way, if you're not sure, ask your friend, ask your wife, ask your husband, ask your children. they'll say, "Yeah, I've looked at something, Dad. You do seem to be a bit short. You're a bit on a bit of a short fuse." Often other people can notice it first. And I actually asked something to Heather yesterday, and she refused to answer. She said, "I'm not answering that to be less stressed." Oh. Ah, yes, good point. Okay, sorry, I've come in with a foul temper after the computer issues. And then this morning she said, "You didn't even realise that she'd had a tough day yesterday." Now I'm sorry, I was a bit wrapped up in myself. And I think that's another sign of stress is that you get self orientated and wrapped up in your own problems, and you're not even open to what's going on around us. So yeah, but I think if you're not sure, ask someone. They'll probably tell you.
I suppose you've got the stereotype. You've got the angry man who is stressed. He's got a red face. He's sweating, and there are some physical symptoms, signs of stress, but it's not necessarily always going to be quite so obvious. Like you say, ask someone.
Well, this is very important actually, and that's a whole thing on personality that maybe we could look into one day. But extroverts, yes, it'll all be out there. You've had a bad day, fumes, steam coming from the nostrils. Introverts store things up and then will blow volcanically at some stage. And I think that's very bad for them and often very bad for everybody else. And I think introverts, you might not know they're stressed, and maybe they do, but they're holding it back. That's something that is probably worth talking about one day because it's a danger to everybody.
Yeah, I'm very much heart on the sleeve. This is how I feel. This is what where I'm at. Joe and Stephen, my oldest son, very much introverted in that sense. You wouldn't know that Stephen was upset, in severe pain. He just gets on his day. There's no real obvious symptom on his face.
Well, and if it's working, that's fine. But I would just say encourage them. Look, if something really is building up, please tell us because otherwise it'll just explode at some stage.
It's the frog in the hot water thing, isn't it? If you jump into boiling water, if you stick it in tepid water and gradually heat it up, eventually that frog won't know and it's going to, die.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Another question. I use earphones regularly. Should I be worried about the effects on my hearing? Some devices warn you about loudness, but is this guided by medical research?
Well, I mean, we know that leaving aside earphones, that excessively loud music, as we all used to be exposed to people of my age, and they used to go to concerts, and of course, band members, musicians do suffer from high tone deafness, which is a result of damage from excessive noise. So these days, people are using earphones more and more. Yes, you need to know, I think, especially if you're playing it loud, what sort of decibel range there is, and you certainly don't want to go above 70 because that is bad for your hearing. And the problem with hearing is a bit like you're going back to your analogy of the frog in the hot water, is it's a slow onset thing. And you only discover down the line that you've been pummeling your ears for 10 years, by which time you can't get it back. So I think, yes, be careful with the earphones. And if you're in any doubt, ask the manufacturers, how do I know what's a safe setting? Certainly below 70, preferably below 60. And particularly if you're going to do it for any lengthy period of time.
Phil Collins, of course, very famously lost his hearing from drumming his Genesis and eventually lost his hearing.
Yeah. I mean, it's our ears are sensitive. If you shine too bright lights in your eyes all the time, you'll damage your eyes. I mean, we're sensitive beings. God's created us, but we're not indestructible.
On hearing, if you have damaged hearing, is there anything of that can actually be repaired by a doctor? Or is it once you've lost your hearing, that's it, you've lost your hearing?
All sorts of things, from hearing aids to cochlear implants in the inner ear, brain stimulation. There's many things. The hearing industry is huge these days, and the great majority of people can be helped. So please don't suffer in silence. And if one set of hearing aids don't suit you, go elsewhere. But certainly, first thing is talk to your doctor. You'll get sent to an audiologist who will do some accurate testing, and then you'll know where you are. A bit like, we seem to be much more keen on, oh, okay, I'll go to an optician to check my eyes out, like you are, Andy, wear glasses and I wear them for long distance, but maybe less keen to check out our hearing. And yeah, but if there's any doubt, go and check them out.
See, I wouldn't have thought about going to someone to sort my ears out. I would obviously think about optician for my glasses, but until you said that, I would not have thought that. Okay, I know there kind of is, but I wouldn't have thought, can I go to GP and they can refer me on to an audiologist?
Exactly how it works. I remember, because not only we got a local good audiologist, but I took my mum there when she was alive, because her hearing was bad, and sadly she never wore the hearing aids that she was prescribed. That's another issue. But I think it's important that other people often notice it. So in our eldership group at church, there's one guy who's really quite deaf, and I've been nagging him. Come on, putting my medical hat on. This is a bit of a pain at meetings because you're saying pardon, not quite getting it. No, you'll suddenly come out with something inappropriate, answering another question because you haven't heard it. Get your ears checked. Don't have to be Einstein to know that sense.
Again, ask a friend. It's that same thing with the stress. Talk to someone.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. Question for Dr. Richard Scott. Why is it different people's why do different people's bodies respond to stress differently? For instance, if I'm particularly stressed, my stomach gets funny, and I guess other people, it may not be their stomach, it might be something else.
Yes, yes. Well, we're all different, and yeah, some of us, yeah, will have a, if you like, a stomach sensitive distress, and then you get sort of indigestion like symptoms. Other people, classically palpitations or a tension. Young people get tense chest pain, which can be quite severe, but it's a tension chest pain rather than a cardiac pain. Um, yeah, other people will notice that they overbreathe, get tingly fingers. Yeah, we respond differently. We're just simply not all the same. Also, some stresses in the same person may not necessarily always elicit the same response. If they're shorter term stress, you might get a different one from a longer term stress. Longer term might well just overwhelm you and give people depression rather than an anger, even rather than the short term, which just might make you, literally palpitations and sweaty. So yeah, I think it depends on the stress. It depends on the length of time it goes on for.
I do remember when I was at school, so this is around 16 to 18 years old. It's actually a girls' school, which is not necessarily relevant next door, but a lot of the girls is like, oh, we're going to become vegetarians. And then all of a sudden, quite a number of them were struggling with anemia. And I just remembered this as you were talking earlier, because obviously they're just cutting out meat, but you can't just stop something because there's good in meat that you need.
The great thing there, if you're going to do that, is green veg. That's where you get your iron from. Interestingly, Heather, my wife, when we were abroad in Tanzania for a few years, she was pregnant twice out there and had very little meat. But actually, her hemoglobin went up because she was getting so much iron and good stuff from the huge amounts of green veg that we ate out there.
Wow.
And so that just shows that actually, if you're careful with your diet, even in pregnancy, you can be fine. But if you're not, then yeah, you'll run into trouble.
Yeah, which is why this sort of reaction of I'm going to stop eating this because it's bad. Well, yes,
Needs a bit of thought.
maybe.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
needs a bit of thought, and yeah, it can be done. It can be done safely and well, but just needs a bit of thought. Yeah, don't just cut something out, add something in.
And don't cut lots of things out at the same time, because again, you won't know what what's causing what.
Absolutely.
Right, that's the questions for this week. Thank you for sending your questions in. Do send them; we love them. We stick them together and put them in one go, and we have a go with the doctor in the house. So we've been looking at stress. If you want to watch those videos again, you can go and find my YouTube channel. Links at the bottom of the website. Stress Part 1, Stress Part 2, which is really good. And one of my favorites back there is caffeine, because I drink coffee now. This is the
Very
power.
good.
This is the but this is the power of words, isn't it? I asked a friend, and he
It
said
is.
drink coffee, so I do.
Now, what I want to encourage people is that, having talked about stress, I'm thinking, okay, I reckon we need to invert this, and the next week, in fact, I reckon the next 2 weeks, we'll talk about happiness. We'll come from there's been again some work on what really makes us happy. So I'm going to look at that week 1, and then I'll extend it week 2, because again, let's as Christians we should have loads to be joyful about, and that's a sort of deep ongoing joy. But what about happiness as well? Happiness and joyfulness are not quite the same. So what makes us really happy? And we'll see what the secular world has discovered that God's probably already revealed. But it's always good to know what's in the news scientifically, and that's where we're going to go the next couple of weeks, I think.
Which is why I'm glad to have you, because I would read it and think, that's nice. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Richard Scott,
Great.
GP. If you're in the US, GP is a family practitioner. Your first port of medical call. If you've got any questions for him on anything medical, you can email that to us. We will put it to him and answer it on air for you. Hello at pure247radio.org. Hello at pure247radio.org is the email. Dr. Richard Scott, GP. Thank you, sir.
Great as ever, Andy.